Ooh, okay, recording. Okay, hello. Hello, everybody who is joining in. Welcome to How to Create Believable Magic Systems. Welcome. So I'm going to speak a little bit or kind of a lot about magic, but I am going to be speaking broad terms because magic is like insanely complex and we could talk about it for days. Um, so I'm going to try to keep it relatively simple and in a way that everybody can relate to it and put it into their own writing. Or if I don't know if there are any readers on here who don't write, but maybe it'll help you see a little bit of what went into creating the magic systems in the books that you enjoy. You can absolutely speak in the chat. I'm going to stop a couple of times to check through the chat and to kind of give you guys a minute to catch up and maybe ask questions along the way. I'm definitely going to save time at the end for a Q&A because why not? But there's going to be kind of a lot of information and I want to make sure that we're all on the same page throughout. So I will be stopping a couple of times. So anyways, feel free to chat away in there. And there's also the Q&A box, I think that you guys have. And I would love for you guys to ask questions because at the end, we can discuss everything that I just talked about, but also, anything you want to know about me and my publishing journey or books I've written or future projects or whatever. If you want to know about me, if you don't, then like no pressure. So yeah, let's get started. I'm going to share, I'm going to share my screen first. Yay. Can you guys see everything? Oh my goodness. Okay. Can you guys see everything just fine? Because I see a lot of stuff on here. Anyways, how to create believable magic systems presented by me, Emmy Hamilton. Okay, good. All right, I'm lowering the chat. Okay, here we go. We will, I'll go through a little introduction. We're going to talk about some world building elements, talk about hard versus soft magic systems, questions you should be asking yourself when creating your magic system. Brandon Sanderson rules. I have kind of a lot to say regarding that. So, we'll go over it and then a Q&A at the end. So kind of simple. So who is Emmy Hamilton? I'm an indie author. So I wrote the first two books in the Destined series. We have Chosen to Fall. I know the screen is like little now, but Chosen to Fall was book 1. Fated to Burn is book 2. This is out this Tuesday, you guys, out on Tuesday. I have one more book in the series that I am planning a release for next November. And I also have a dark fantasy that I am trying to hopefully release next July. So 2 books this year, 2 books next year, and I have several other projects in the works. So very exciting. I have my bachelor's in English and creative writing. I have my MFA in creative writing with a concentration on fiction and the online instruction of writing. I've been writing for over a year. I've been blogging, news articles, creative nonfiction essays. I am a published poet, and I've also done copywriting, creating websites for businesses, stuff like that. And I specialize personally in young adult fiction fantasy, sci-fi, speculative, and I have recently taken several courses for specifically romance. So that's who I am. Before we begin, I do want to just point out that these rules, or like, these are like more like guidelines. They're not hard and fast rules. Everybody has, your own story is so unique. So whatever I talk about really might not apply for you and your current work in progress, or it might not apply at all for like the universe that you want to create. But this is meant to be seen as more of a set of guidelines, just in case you get stuck, or you have no idea how to go about creating magic the way that you might want to. So yeah, just remember, what I find important for me and the way that I write my stories, you might be like, no, thank you, ma'am. But here we are. So the first thing that I always do before I create magic is I make sure that my world building is like down pat. I always look at my setting, my government, and my economy. And those might seem like really strange things to look at first when I consider specifically my magic system. But those are the three. This could change depending on the type of story you're writing. If you're writing some type of dystopian something or other, the setting and the government might be really important, but the economy might mean nothing to you. If you're writing something that has to do with more of like an arcane magic type of thing, then definitely this might not apply. So just keep in mind, these are the three that I find most important when I am creating my magic systems. We're digging deeper into setting. You want to talk about, where does a story take place? Is it on Earth? Is it in another realm or dimension, on another planet? These things really matter because, for example, if your story takes place on Earth, Earth already exists, right? So we have our own rules, we have our own governments, like all of those kind of structural things are kind of already figured out, depending on if the year that your story takes place. Whether it takes place in the past, it's going to be a little bit different. If it takes place in the future, if it's, like a dystopian type of thing, rules might be a little bit different, but on Earth, we already have these set of rules. So unless you plan on breaking those rules, you don't really need to concentrate too much on it. Another realm or a dimension means that you're making up your own rules about pretty much everything, right? So who governs the place, and what type of food, they eat there. So government, who is ruling your land? If it takes place on Earth in current times, does it take place in, America or your home country? Is it a democracy, or whatever way your country is ruled? Is it dystopian? That's going to be really important for just the structure of who does everyone answer to, right? If it takes place on another planet or a realm, is it a king or queendom? Is it a council of people? But most importantly, the two things that you want to consider, no matter where it is who is creating the laws and who ensures they're upheld. These two bodies are going to have the most power. So when it comes to creating your magic system, you have to figure out like who's creating the laws and who's upholding the laws, because those are most likely going to be affecting your magic users. And that's going to build onto the conflict and character development and things like that. So government and who's ruling is always the most important for me. When I wrote Chosen to Fall, I wanted it to be a queendom. I wanted it to be very female positive, and I wanted magic to be very central to everything. So that was something that I knew before I created my story, and I knew that it was going to be important in the way that everything played out. So here we are. The economy. This might not seem that significant, but I always do place it on high importance when I'm outlining. So what is the currency, trade, and food? Specifically, does magic play any significance on these? It's the smaller details like this that I think really help ensure that the magic of your world is like really all encompassing. So, for example, again, in Chosen to Fall, I had the food was grown by people who could magically enhance the earth to make the ground more fertile and to make sure that they always had a good yield each season. Um, as far as trade went, I didn't place a high importance on money necessarily, but they trade in favors in this in this book. Um, so if someone can't afford something, that doesn't stop you from being able to get a thing. They can instead trade something else. So that could be you know, using their power to help somebody with something or something like that. This is a small detail that I don't talk about heavily in Chosen to Fall, and it might have passed over a couple of readers, but it's something that I made sure to have in place because it helps run the economy. It helps the city of Athenia. It just helps make it a little bit more real. You also would want to consider religion, landscape, class systems. So religion, I feel like, is just kind of a given. It are like is magic because of the gods, or is there some sort of like dark sacrifice because of the gods? Your landscape is important because are you in like an arid desert place like in Dune, right? Or are you in a lush tropical garden? Like these things are going to influence what type of magic users you have and what's at their disposal to use the magic. So there's that. And then class systems. That is, you know, our what's the social standing like? Are magic users accepted into society, or are they hiding? Are they treated well or not? So yeah, those are all things that you're going to want to consider. So at this point, you should know how abundant magic is in your world, who can use it, and how they use it. So that's what those world building elements are all going to do for you. The reader should be able to understand the foundations of your magic system if you flesh out these world building elements. So these are the only world building elements that I'm going to talk about pretty much today, because coming up soon, Vanessa Resman is doing a whole thing on world building. So if you haven't signed up for that yet, you should, because it's going to be awesome. But she can, when you're in her workshop, you can also think about the types of things that she talks about in terms of world building, and you can think of like, how will magic affect, you know, my story with those world building elements as well. But these that I went over are what's most important to me. So I want to pause real quick. We could do a quick activity if you wanted to write down your own world building elements that's in your novel or work in progress. And you want to consider, like, how does your main character fit into the world? So after you have like all of kind of like that structural stuff figured out, how is your main character affected by this world? What's the conflict? What is their goal? How do they want to achieve it? And how's magic going to affect it? So you can think about that if you wanted to. If you're not doing a fantasy story, if you're doing like a sci-fi, or you're just doing a story with like time travel, or something a little bit less complex than that, you can just quickly make it up if you wanted to. But you just want to think about, where's your land and who rules it and what's the economy like. So I'm going to stop and I'm going to check the chat because I don't know if anybody has said anything. So I'm going to stop this the share real quick. How's everyone doing? Okay. Don't forget as well, if there's any questions that you can think of, pop them in the Q&A box. I'm going to check those a little bit later. So here we go. Common magic type examples. We have elemental. So that includes earth, wind, fire, and air. This is something that I feel like I don't want to assume, but I'm going to assume that most people know, and when they think of magic, probably think of this sort of thing, like people who can manipulate fire and water and ice and stuff like that. For me personally, my story, my main character, Faria, she's all about the elemental stuff. She can set things on fire. She can manipulate the weather. She can take oxygen out of the air. She can suffocate people if she wanted to. She doesn't want to though. So yeah, so that's something that I feel like a lot of people kind of gravitate towards, because how cool would it be to just set things on fire with your mind. So elemental. There's also arcane magic. This is popular in more like high fantasy type of things, but that's a mystical magic that uses raw energy. It's typically activated by use of spells. You have alchemy, turning one thing into another. So this would be like your potions and such. We have healing. This is a lot different depending on your personal story and your lore, but there could be spells, divine energy. It could come from within. You could be healing with the environment. There's a lot of different ways that you can use healing. There's also dark magic. This is magic that corrupts the user, whether they're aware of it or not. This would be an example I put is Frodo using the ring. He doesn't realize right away that it's slowly corrupting him, but over time it will. We know that because of Smeagol, what happened with him. So yeah. And shape-shifting, it's pretty self-explanatory, but that is another type of magic. I didn't put an example of that because there are like a million different types of different shape-shifting things. So under here would be like, you could go with your traditional like werewolf type of thing, where they shift with the full moon or whatever it is. I do have shape-shifting in my story. In Fated to Burn, which is not out yet, so no spoilers for people who haven't read it in advance, but there are a group of shapeshifters that follow their own sets of rules. They can only turn into one type of animal, with the exception of my other main character, Nellie, who can turn into anything. So shapeshifting. And there are so many more different types of magic users, magic examples. So like however you want to create your characters, however you want the conflict to be, it's really open, you guys. There are you can't narrow it down necessarily to one thing. You can make up your own thing. I made up a species called the Vol, and they're kind of like a mixture of fae and elves, and they're blessed by the gods, so they have like all this power, and they don't exist anywhere else, but I gave them things, and I gave them a set of rules to have it make sense. So there's that. So the range, the how, and the change. These are considerations when adding magic into your world. They're really self-explanatory. Who's affected by the magic? So this would be the range, right? Who is the magic user targeting? How are they being targeted? How does it affect them? Is it physical or mental? Like, is someone changing their appearance, or is someone physically harming somebody else? And what ends up changing? So someone turns invisible, someone's harmed, reduced powers, they change their location, etc. These things, these questions to ask yourself, they all encourage character development depending on how the magic user is choosing to use their magic, and it adds on conflict. Whatever you decide to do, it should always advance the plot. So you don't just want to add in somebody, setting something on fire for no reason, right? You want to, anything that you decide to do, and whatever you decide to use your magic on, it has to make sense to the story, and it has to make sense to the reader, because the reader's not going to want to know everything that magic can do, and they'll get confused and they won't understand how it pertains to the overall plot. So whatever you do, and whatever decisions you make for your characters, you just want to make sure that it's beneficial to your story and not just random background information that they don't need to know. So, two major magic systems: hard versus soft magic systems. Brandon Sanderson talks about these like all the time. So, a hard magic system: set rules, consequences, and limitations that govern what you can and cannot use the magic on or with. And this helps the reader believe in the reliability of your magic system, understand how the magic will resolve or compound the conflict, and it will help the reader feel more connected to your story. So if you have all this crazy complex magic, you want to make sure, if you're going this route, if you want to use a hard magic system, you want to make sure that it just makes sense. Whatever rules you create, they have to be consistent. Otherwise, your reader, it's going to take them out of the story. They're going to be extremely confused, and they're not going to know why you're doing anything that you're doing. So, predictability. This is kind of what I was saying. Consistency is extremely important for a reader. Consistency, again, this means limitations are set on the magic. For example, it could be that there's a cost to using the magic. So if someone is gonna shoot a firebolt at somebody, is it gonna use up their energy? Do they have to use blood magic or some sort of sacrifice to make it work? Like, what's going to happen to them? What's the results? So that would be cost. Is there a weakness? Someone who has multiple powers, perhaps, does using one power make them more vulnerable over using another power? I like adding weaknesses into our powerful characters because it shows that there's something that can go wrong. And you always want there to be something that can go wrong. You never want the magic to be perfect. You never want, in my opinion, a perfect villain, or a perfect hero. Costs: all magic comes with a price. So like I said before, loss of energy, loss of memory. In Serpent and Dove, if you guys have read that, whenever she uses magic, she has to give up a memory, I think it was. So there's something like that. And you want to think about this style, right? Is it a blood sacrifice? Does it require God's blessing? Things like that. Whatever you choose with the hard magic system, again, you just want to make sure that it fits your rules and it is consistent. So soft magic system. This one is vague, undefined rules that are never quite fully explained. This is like Lord of the Rings. Things are well made, but the magic is never really defined. No one is out of reach of Sauron except Tom Bombadil, right? But it's never really explained exactly how that works. It's mainly used as an awe or wow factor. And you can have limitations with soft magic, but you want to make sure that you're consistent, and whatever system you use, it has to fit your narrative. So I have examples of hard and soft magic systems that I'm going to tell you about in a second. You do want to consider the point of view, however, when it comes to specifically soft magic systems or hard magic systems too. But if the magic is being told from the point of view, or if the story is being told from the point of view of the magic user, and you're trying to have a soft magic system, you just want to be very careful, because you can't, if you're having a soft magic system, the rules are not exactly defined. So if your main character is using this magic, you might describe how it feels to use it, but you would never want to say where exactly it comes from or how that magic got there, because then you're moving more towards a hard magic system. You're giving it a set of rules and things like that. So a lot of times you might see that when using a soft magic system, the point of view might not be coming from the magic user themselves, because you'd have a lot that you would need to explain. And that's not every story, obviously. But oftentimes you will see that if you're going for just a straight soft magic system, you're not often going to get points of view from the main character who is using the magic. Soft magic can go wrong quickly because the user might not know the risks, or it's unpredictable. And common styles would be rituals or spells, things that are unrestricted, which gives you more possibilities for world building. So I personally use a mixture of hard and soft magic systems. I do have my main character, Faria. She kind of has no rules, and so she has all this magic ability that she is coming into. So she's going through the change, which is something that elves do between the years 18 and 20. And this is when their powers kind of settle within themselves. So that was like the rule that I made, was that there's a change, and that she's going to get these abilities that you're not really quite sure until she's 20, and that's it. So when the book starts, she's 17 turning 18. So she's just getting all these powers. By the end of Fated to Burn, she's 20. So you're going to have all the powers settled into her. And I did that on purpose, because I didn't want everything to be fully explained right away. And I never really defined exactly where everything came from, except you're going to know by the end of the second book. So that is that. Oh, before we talk about questions to ask yourself, I do want to talk about another example with Marvel. So I apologize for all the DC lovers. It's not me. I'm a Marvel fan, but I wanted to talk about the way that Marvel specifically uses magic, because I haven't brought up anything that has to do with superheroes or anything like that, which is its own brand of speculative magic. And because it's so subjective and you can do whatever you want in your own world, it's hard for me to say you need to do this or this or this, because you can literally do whatever you want. But I did want to talk about what Marvel did. So we have Wanda, right? So the Scarlet Witch. If we're going just off of what we've seen on screen, not the graphic novels, because we can really get lost in those. But if we're talking about what we see on screen, when she was first introduced, her powers were kind of chaotic and never really defined, right? And so we kind of see she has one ability and then another, and they kind of manifest over time. In Wanda Vision, hopefully no spoilers for anybody. In Wanda Vision, we meet a witch named Agnes, who defines what it means to be a witch, basically, within this universe. And she goes on to say that Wanda doesn't fit those rules. So up until then, they didn't have any rules to define Wanda. And that was okay. We accepted it because it was really cool to see what she did and, watch what happened. In WandaVision, the rules were set and then broken, basically. So that's one way that you can incorporate a softer magic system and letting whatever sort of chaos rule that you want to. And then later on, if you want to add those rules and kind of define more, add the definition of what something means, then you can do that. Doctor Strange, however, his magic was learned through extreme studying, recitation, doing the correct order of spells, and his hand manipulations and things like that. He was taught the magic. He was literally a doctor before. He didn't have the magic, so he taught himself how to use it. That's a different thing. That's much more of like a hard magic system. There were rules that he had to follow that he still follows to make sure that the magic works, and we accept it. And maybe it's confusing, or it's confusing for me, but it's confusing in a way that consistently makes sense. And then you have like Loki, if you want to consider Loki as part of this magic under the umbrella of the Marvel universe. Loki's kind of in the middle, right? Because he was born with innate powers. He was born of like an ice giant or whatever who had like innate ice powers, right? And then his mother, Frigga, is a sorceress, and she taught him how to do magic the way that she does magic. And so he had this power, this ability that was already inside of him, and she kind of just enhanced it through learning. So that one's kind of a mixture of both. And yeah, so the way that Marvel did their magic, it's through personal, universal, and dimensional energy. So basically, Marvel's rules are that all reality can be altered based on one of those types of things if you're tapping into the power correctly. And it's a vaguely defined rule, or a defined rule that's still vague, because it allows them to play with whatever they want to play with under this huge umbrella. And, then they have like the Hulk, which is, scientifically explained how he happened. And then you have Thor, who is a god. And so under this one universe, you can have whatever you want. My point is, magic is subjective, and you can do it and however you want to that makes sense to your story. There we go. Questions to ask yourself. Where does the magic come from? Is it from the gods or nature, intrinsic? Is it mystical? Can it only be used with an object, etc.? Where and when can it be used? Is it only under a full moon, in a particular forest or land or realm, or the whole planet? This, in my book, Faria, my main character, when she ends up on Earth, her magic doesn't work, because magic doesn't work on Earth. So while I gave her more of a softer rule set to follow, it was very strict. She could not access her magic on Earth because of reasons that I gave, and it helps to define the magic system that I created. Also, you might want to consider, can the magic be used within city limits? Are there days where it's not allowed? Who will enforce it? Are there stronger magic users who will enforce it? That's all part of like world building elements, but it also gives you a hierarchy. It also helps to figure out potential conflicts that might need to be overcome. Who can use the magic? What are its limitations? How is it used? How does it affect the world? Is it secret, banished, forbidden, or is it a part of society? Like they help grow crops and with healing, the way that I chose to use it in my book. Does it ever expire, or is it unlimited? Does it run through a specific familial line or species? Are spells or some sort of conduit needed? So these are all, you can ask yourself 1,000,001 questions, but these are all things that, again, I think about when I'm creating a new story or that I want to use magic in. But you have 3 important things to remember. If it works, keep it. If it doesn't work, get rid of it. And you want to, if you decide that whatever magic you want to use is not working for your story, change it. Change it. Otherwise, you're going to get so far deep into this plot and you're going to get stuck on really wanting to do something and it's just not going to work. And you're going to have to get rid of so many things after. Trust me, it happened to me. Don't use magic for convenience either. That's going to ruin your suspension of disbelief. So what I mean is, if you've made a set of rules, for example, Faria, my main character, can't use her normal magic on Earth. If I had all of a sudden given her access to her firepower on Earth, even though I said she can't do it, and then never really explained why, that's going to ruin the suspension of disbelief. Your reader's going to be like, no, you said that couldn't happen. This doesn't work for me. So whatever you decide to use, that's just like one small example, but whatever you decide, make sure the magic makes sense and is not just for convenience to get your character out of a sticky situation. And also remember that the reader does not have to know everything that magic can do. You really only want to include what's significant to the plot, character development, whatever's going to move your story forward. So you can ask yourself those questions from the previous page. You can answer all of those, plus a whole bunch more, but that doesn't mean you're going to necessarily incorporate them all into the story. That's so you as a writer fully understands your own rules for the magic system that you made, but you really only want to include whatever is going to be important to the story that your reader needs to know. Like, does your reader need to know that when, potions are made on Sundays, it's not until Thursday at the 9th hour that they're ready? No, probably not. Don't include things like that, but maybe you want to know that because maybe that's going to be important later, like a little detail that you're going to add on later. So, rules from Brandon Sanderson. I'm going to be really honest with you guys. I've not read anything by Brandon Sanderson. And I know you're probably like, what the heck are you doing talking about magic when you haven't read anything from the King of Magic? My apologies. However, Brandon Sanderson has it right. He talks about this hard versus soft magic system all the time. It's rules that he follows, and he's got it down. No matter what book with magic you might read and come up with, you're going to see now that you know what all of these rules are, you're going to see that that the rules are followed. So these particular rules from Brandon Sanderson, they are what he wants us as writers to look at in our final drafts. This is not first draft. This is not when you're word vomiting on the page, not when you're making all your mistakes. This is like 5th, 6th, 7th draft. You want to go through and think about these things as it pertains to your magic system. So, your ability to solve problems with magic in a satisfying way that is directly proportional to how well the reader understands the magic. This is going to be the rule number 1. A satisfying way means the reader will be satisfied with the conclusion, usually used through proper foreshadowing, but they're going to be satisfied because of the way that you've already set up your rules to the magic. So if your reader understands and fully gets how the magic works, they're going to be really happy with you by the end of the story, however you decide to use your magic. Number 2, the flaws your magic has is much more interesting than the powers. So what Brandon Sanderson means by this is you don't want to have all of a million different powers. You don't want to have 7, 8, 9, 10 different powers that are really cool. You want to have maybe a couple that are really cool, and you want to have there to be a flaw. You want to have there to be a flaw. Hello. You want there to be a flaw. And the reason for that is because it adds more, it makes your character more well-rounded. Nobody is perfect. Nothing is perfect, right? So you don't want to have this magic be perfect. And I said that earlier on, but you want to make sure that there are flaws, because it's going to add in conflict. It's going to add in character development. What are they going to do to overcome those flaws, right? So that is what's going to help push your plot forward, and it's going to give you a little bit more to work with, especially if you're getting stuck on what to do. If writing is becoming too easy, if writing the magic is becoming too easy, then perhaps your magic is too easy and you need to come up with some flaws for your characters. So the flaws, like I said, are limitations. Limitations are one of the foundations of story building. So an example would be a cost, right? So my character gets stuck in a ditch, and then, they end up levitating themselves out of the ditch. Well, if they're going to do that, then are they right as rain, or are they extremely tired? Are they just so exhausted? Now they need food, they need a short rest, they need something to continue forward. If they're just going to do that and then be like, okay, well, that was cool, that's not exciting. You want them to have to take a short rest, and then maybe an enemy is coming from over here, but they're too tired, they can't defend themselves, and then you're going to build it from there. You want to go deeper into the magic instead of wider. So there's more significant impact to the story when a few elements are explored properly than a bunch of elements are barely grazed upon. So that goes hand in hand with the previous rule. You just want to make sure that whatever you do it well, and don't do too much of it. No one needs too much of it. Your reader does not need you to have 80 really cool elements that they don't understand. They want to have the 2 or 3 that are fully explored, that they're really excited about. One way to do this as well is foreshadowing. Especially if you're a planner, you can plan the foreshadowing really well. Or if you're more of a discovery writer, the way I am, aka a pantser, you can still create the same sense of awe through discovery. But that just means, keep doing what you're doing with the elements that you have. You don't have to add on more to be awesome. Just keep doing what you're doing. Oh, and number 4, always err on the side of what is awesome. Ultimately, you want to impress your reader. You want them to come away from, wow, that magic was the bomb.com, and I wish that something like that happened in real life. I wish I had these powers, something like that. Fantasy is about inspiring. So don't be afraid to do something because it's cool. You can figure out the limitations. We're at the end here, guys. To summarize, a hard magic system can help solidify your reader and your story and provide excellent suspension of disbelief. Using a soft magic system is an excellent way to provide that wow factor in your story. And no matter what you choose, the most important thing is that you be consistent and have fun with it. That's it. This is how you can contact me. Through my website. You can always reach me on Instagram, author Emmy Hamilton. Twitter, I'm never really on, but you can go on there, author Emmy Ham. TikTok, maybe not. I am on there, but I don't know how to do TikTok. So I will stop the screen share now. I'm going to go into the chat and Q&As and give you guys a second to absorb everything I just said, because I know it was a lot. So that font was small. I do apologize. Time traveling. Yes, I knew there would be a question on time traveling. I couldn't write fast enough. We can go over it again. Okay. Time traveling. Time traveling is has its own set of rules. It really depends on what kind of story you want to write. I haven't written personally anything with, I've jumped portals, I've jumped worlds, but I haven't gone backwards or forwards in time. And so it's hard for me to say what you should do. Are you writing a sci-fi story? Is it like a historical fiction? Is time travel happening because of like an Outlander? There's like an arcane magic to it. Or is there a correct magnetism in some sort of outer space, like force field, that's going to create a portal that is a wormhole back 50 years. There's a lot to time travel that you can make up, but I do want to say time travel is one of those things that I feel like readers are going to be particularly interested in the details. So whatever you decide to do, however you're going to create your time traveling, it has to be consistent and it has to make sense. If they're just jumping through stones with no explanation of why, or you have these crystals, maybe 3 crystals resonate properly because of whatever magic they're imbued in that creates a portal that allows you to jump back in time. Or maybe it's just like a human power, the human can move time. It's difficult to say what you should do. I just suggest that you keep it consistent because the readers are really they're gonna pay attention to that one. Yes, the recording will be on the website for sure. A magic story about going into space and back in time. Oh yeah. Okay. So, going into space and back in time. I like the sound of that. That's super interesting. And that kind of gives you, it gives you an opening to do almost whatever you want. But if you're going to use space, if it's going to have some sort of science fiction element to it, you want to make sure that the rules you create do make sense. With sci-fi especially, it's based in science. It's based kind of in an idea of a truth that could be. So if you're going to do time travel in that way in outer space, then you should have some sort of element that can be proven, or maybe is a theory in real life, like a theory that one of our scientists have that you're going to make up and expand upon, something like that. Okay, Q&As. There's so much to think about when doing a magic system. Where do you start? Yeah, so when creating a magic system, I really start with who my character is, what the conflict is, what my problem is, and how is my character going to overcome it, and then I work in magic that way. I so far have always included magic into my stories. I always want to. I love the idea of it. And I always start with who my character is. I'm huge on character development. So that I like it almost more than the plot, honestly. So when I make magic systems, I make sure that whatever magic I choose to incorporate, the characters are going to have a huge arc because of it. How do you come up with a completely new magic system, not your standard elemental and witchy stuff? That's a good idea, or a good question as well. So in my work in progress, my current project that I haven't officially really announced to the world yet, but I am creating a new-ish magic system. So I'm going to have different, there are going to be different realms and a particular way to get there. And the magic that can be used, it's going to be given by the gods, kind of. Um, but I wanted to create something totally fresh, right? So again, I looked at my main character. She doesn't have magic. So I want to know, how is the magic going to affect her and her development? This God, um, he has the magic and he's going to directly affect what she does. And so I thought, what would it be like for her, right? What would it be like to be trapped, to be like unable to do anything because someone's using magic on me? How can I trust that what's happening is it's it's genuine from them, or is it influenced by magic and power and things like that? And so so I just thought, like, what kind of magic would I hate to be trapped by? How would I want to get out of it? And would I want to try to use it and manipulate it and things like that? So yeah, so that's another thing. When I come up with a new magic system, I just think, how is it going to affect the characters and how is it going to drive the plot forward? And then I think of cool ways to do it. This new magic system that I'm creating, there's nothing elemental to it. It's more of I guess like a power of suggestion is the main focus. So that's not often, I think, seen in dark fantasy. So how do you blend hard and soft magic systems? Yeah. So that's kind of what I did with my book Chosen to Fall and Fated to Burn. So I gave Nellie, the shapeshifter, she has set rules. I gave Faria kind of undefined rules because she kept discovering new powers. So the reader was discovering new powers with her. And it wasn't until the second book that I defined it a little bit more clearly. So whatever your rules are, you don't need to have them right away, but you should have an idea of if there are ever going to be limitations and how you're going to use them. So for Faria, my main character, she has all this elemental magic. She can do whatever she wants, basically. But she's new at it. There's no one to teach her how to use it. It's a lot of raw energy. And so because of that, she uses up her energy quickly, and she can't yet control her emotions well enough to not scorch the earth or to cause an earthquake or something like that. So those are the limitations. Those are kind of the flaws that are built in to the magic that I'm allowing her to have. So so hers is more vague and it's like cool. The things that she does is like really cool, but there are also problems that come with it. Whereas Nellie, she's a shapeshifter. She can turn into whatever she wants. She can turn into other humans as well. And she's more of the only rule really for her is that it uses up her energy greatly. So she can't stay as a particular animal. She can't jump from animal to animal or whatever, because it would then she won't be able to do it anymore. So that's kind of how I'm blending personally hard and soft magic systems, but it really depends. Like, are you doing like a super high fantasy that requires, that has lots of different species or races that have their own sets of magic? If you're incorporating warlocks or wizards or something, like, you want to make sure that whatever their rules are is consistent. And if you want to have something that's a little bit more awesome, you can incorporate anything. You can incorporate like even like plants that do something cool. You have no reason why they're doing something cool. It's just something that they do. It could be whatever you want. So that's that one. Time traveling we talked about. How do you manage the different sections of the magic story? Backstory, what it is, where it came from. That's a good question as well. So I personally am a chaotic mess of a pantser. So I personally leave sticky notes and random notes everywhere. So don't follow my method. I do have Scrivener, and Scrivener uses the there's like a little sticky note section as well. So when I have time and when I think about organizing my chaotic mess, I will briefly type in like the little sticky note section of what happens when. And that helps to keep me organized. But if you guys want something like a really great method for organizing all of your notes, I'm not the one to ask. I can't do it. I'm too much of a mess. But my chaos makes sense to me. So I will write out the backstory to everybody, to all of my characters, and I will write out what their powers are, and I will write out their limitations and how magic will affect them as much as how their magic will affect others. So those, I always write them out. I keep them posted, and that's consistent for me. Everything else that happens, again, I'm a pantser, so I'll go back after writing a couple of chapters, usually like every 10 to 20,000 words, depending on what happened. I'll go back and I'll add to my chaotic mess of what I did, and then I'll kind of see if the structure makes sense. And if it doesn't make sense, then I change it. I change it right away, because otherwise, you guys, you're gonna delete like 50,000 words, like I had to. And okay, so that was that one. Power, suggestion, like manipulation, the idea of power, control, and possibly abuse of powers. Yeah, that's sort of like what my my work in progress is exploring, is the power of suggestion and the manipulation of that power. That's like one aspect of it. And it's because it's coming from a god, because he has these powers, it's a little bit more of a fantastical element rather than like a speculative or a science fiction-y element. Because you can do like mind reading and things like that, that could be considered magic, but there also could be real scientific explanations as to why certain things are happening, why humans are becoming superhumans, things like that. And I'm not touching that. I'm not going in that direction with this story. This is literally another realm. There's a god who's manipulating somebody else, and so he's using his power to influence her, and she maybe eventually might be learning how to do the same thing. So yeah, that is it. And go back to the chat. Well, I found a star that really exists and placing a planet nearby. That's cool. Yeah, you should do that. The newer animated Voltron series uses time traveling within the laws of astrophysics and magic. Exactly. So that's exactly it. That's kind of why I didn't really touch upon time travel, because I'm not really talking about science fiction specifically with this particular workshop. But most people, most viewers, most readers will want to have real reasons why something is happening, even if it's fantastical, and time travel is one of those. So so that's exactly it. If this new series is using time travel and explaining it through astrophysics and magic, boom, makes sense. I mean, there's a story that's being worked on as well by one of my friends who's going to be using the same thing. He's going to be incorporating science-y reasons and more mystical reasons on why his group of people can go back in time. So definitely. Viruses as being sorcerers and weaving spells on humans. Viruses being sorcerers and weaving spells on humans. That's interesting. Yeah, heck yeah. What? Roll with that. That sounds so cool. Yes. Definitely. So that's what I mean. I know I'm just kind of not really reading the chat out loud, but um, I'm just encouraging a fellow writer to do this because that's exciting to use virus as a sorcerer and weave spells on humans. Yes, you can do whatever you want. Magic, you can do whatever you want with magic. You just have to make sure that it's consistent and it follows the rules that you set for it. It doesn't have to follow rules that other people have done. You don't have to do, what Tolkien did in Lord of the Rings. You don't have to do what Sarah J. Maas decided to do with all of her characters. You can literally do whatever you want with your own magic, as long as it makes sense to you and your characters and your story. And that's it. All right. Anything else, you guys? I think that's it for me. I'm going to say no. I think we answered all of the questions. Done. You're welcome. Thank you, everybody who tuned in. I know there's going to be quite a few people who come back into this later on because they're sleeping or working or whatever the case is. And thank you for joining me and wanting to listen to me. And again, you can reach me on Instagram is the easiest, author Emmy Hamilton. I am almost always on there, very accessible. So if you guys have any questions about magic or you just want to run like your ideas by me, I love it. I cannot explain to you how much I love helping other writers with their stories. So just drop me a message and I am so happy to talk about it with you. But yeah, thank you everybody for joining. This is fun and good luck with creating your magic systems.